Sinclair Broadcast Group, connecting people with content everywhere.
Ahead on America This Week, calls for a second impeachment grow.
Now is the time for our nation to heal, and it's time for peace and for calm.
Donald Trump should not hold office one day longer.
As a new administration is just days away from taking over the presidency, I'm talking with White House trade advisor Peter Navarro.
I think this is going to be one of the most difficult times in the U.S.-China relationship.
And my friend and former colleague Megyn Kelly weighs in as big tech silences conservative voices.
Parler's been killed. It has been assassinated by left-wing big tech executives.
Congressman Ralph Norman is also here. And moving forward, following last week's attack on the Capitol, I'm talking with the man who led the Capitol Hill organized protests last year in Seattle, Raz Simone.
I'm tired of the super far extremes, the extreme right, the extreme left. No one's listening to each other. What do you expect that you're going to get at that point?
That's all right now on America This Week. Welcome to America This Week. Now, there's no sugarcoating it. Last week was tough to see, tough to hear, and tough to relive as more and more details emerged about the attack on the Capitol and the lives lost. But we as a country have to face this head on. There's no going back to the way we used to be. This morning, I realized that everything is about to change. No matter how I vote, no matter what I say, America is going to never be the same. I've been covering politics for almost 2 decades. And at this moment in time, we are further apart as a nation than ever before, at least in my lifetime. My friends are split. The liberal ones won't talk to the conservative friends. See, I told you so. I told you it was going to end this way. But you know what? They were right. They've been saying this would happen all along. My conservative friends are still shaking their collective heads. Wow, things were going great for 4 years. What the heck happened? They're right, too. Things were going great for conservatives. They got 3 Supreme Court justices seated, taxes were lowered, regulations were rolled back like never before. So what happened? As a libertarian, I should have seen this coming. The right was getting their way while the left was getting more and more disenfranchised, but elections have consequences, and the winning team always has advantages. I saw that. It was Republicans' turn now, but Democrats had 8 years of Obama, and they'll get their turn again. But what I didn't see coming was the level at which the status quo on both sides were going to protect what they had. The gravy train, that is the American political system, was being threatened. Trump was a new type of politician, a non-politician. He was changing the way things were being done in D.C. Rather than being a fresh new start, Trump represented a threat to the D.C. political elite class on both sides of the aisle. For the 4 years Trump was president, D.C. was uncomfortable. They're worried that their grift would end. Now, here's how the grift goes down. Lawmakers, both sides, spend our money on projects they say help our country, make it better, make it safer, make it more efficient. But instead of being stewards of our money, too many lawmakers hand it over to friends of theirs for favors, for votes, and in some cases, for donations to their political campaigns. Ever wonder how a congressman or woman can come to D.C., make $100 grand per year after tax, and leave a few years later with tens of millions of dollars, huge homes and vacation spots around the world? The grift, that's how. You don't have to look too hard to find dozens of examples of those success stories. It's almost unheard of for an elected official to leave Congress as a middle classer, or God forbid, poor. It just doesn't happen. Ever wonder why? Well, I have to say, it's D.C., it's just a gross swamp. People using each other for favors. Everything has a string attached to it in D.C. No one does something because it's right or good for the country. They only do stuff because they've already negotiated a return favor. It's that bad in D.C., and folks, I kid you not, it is that bad. So where does that leave us now? It leaves us divided. It leaves us agitated. It leaves us perplexed. Where are we headed? Politically, there's a line drawn down the middle of America, politically. There's a left and there's a right now. There's no middle ground anymore, no gray area. It appears there are no more independents either. Everything is right or wrong. And God help you, if you're wrong, you're likely to be canceled. Gone are the days of compromise or the days of explaining your rationale for some position, because it won't matter. The other side is 100% entrenched in their side. Just ask them. Everyone is taking a side, and the sides are pushing further and further apart. Usually you like to end the monologue with something poignant or a thought, something provoking comment, ideas. Sometimes I'm even cogent when delivering my closing line. This time, folks, I literally don't know what to say. I'm at a loss for words, and that's a real rarity, I must admit. I just don't feel it's the right time to be any more provocative than what real life already is. It should be alarming to everyone within earshot that reality is more shocking than opinion. Now I'd like to bring in my good friend and host of the Megyn Kelly Show podcast. By the way, a great podcast, everybody. You got to go get your podcast, Megyn Kelly. Get your Megyn Kelly on. Megyn Kelly. Megyn, thank you for joining us. A huge week going on. We have impeachments. We have social media. Let's start with the impeachment of Donald Trump. Good idea, bad idea for both sides?
I don't think it's a good idea because it can't go anywhere. And, if they want to be symbolic, there are many other ways of doing that. I think I understand people are angry and that Trump behaved terribly, but I don't think this is the answer because the primary purpose of impeachment is to eject somebody from office. And, there's another foolproof way of doing that, which is wait a week.
Yeah. Well, what about those who say, he needs to be held accountable? The left is saying, look, if we don't do this now, then what happens the next time a president doesn't like the outcome of something and incites violence and people die?
That's ridiculous. Then he will be impeached or she will be impeached if she is in office and there is time left in her term. When the controversial act takes place, there are many ways of punishing Trump, and they're already happening for his rhetoric and his behavior, in between the election and now. And we're already seeing those unfold. But I don't think putting the country through another impeachment and looking at a potential Senate trial that takes place during the opening weeks and months of Joe Biden's term serves anybody. And frankly, least of all, Joe Biden. So if this is just punitive, Nancy Pelosi was super happy when she impeached President Trump the first time. And she said on Bill Maher, he'll always be impeached. So maybe she just wants to say he'll always have been impeached twice. But they're not going to get a conviction. They don't have the numbers in the Senate, so it appears. And even going through that process over the first couple of weeks or months of Biden's term doesn't seem to make any sense to me when the ultimate remedy, they already won.
Megyn, this week Politico came out with a poll, which kind of shocked me, even with what's going on over this since January 6th. Likely 2024 potential candidates for president, leading that list at 40%, one Donald John Trump. Kind of shocked me a little bit. Does that surprise you?
A little, I guess. I don't know. I don't think his core supporters are ever going to leave him. We've seen that. And no matter what happens in the Trump presidency, as outrageous as it may be, and this is definitely the most outrageous, I think his detractors are always like, this is it. This is the one. And then they're like, why? Why not still, right? And I do, my impression in trying to listen to Trump's most ardent supporters, even in the past week, is that they don't see him as personally culpable for what happened at the Capitol last week as his detractors do. Now, it's up to your audience to make up their own minds on this, but I think that's why his numbers are still high, because his core supporters aren't blaming him for last Wednesday.
So let's move on to the other big story. Social media basically looks like we know they've pulled Trump and some of his Trump websites off of their platforms, but other conservatives are saying they're being deplatformed as well, either fully. Bongino says Parler is being deplatformed. Some other conservatives. I've lost 100,000 followers on Twitter alone. Haven't complained about it because there are a lot more losses going on. However, do you see a bias within social media, or is this just literally what they're saying is they're pulling down right-wing extremist groups, and that's where we're seeing some of the losses? Yep.
No, I've lost almost 100,000 myself. And then when you look at these Democratic accounts, Nancy Pelosi and so on, they're going way up. So it's not just a purging on the perceived right. It's also an inflation on the left. And Twitter says, first they lied about it. First they said, we're just, some people don't provide an email or a cell phone number. And so, their account isn't really matching up, and therefore we make sure we got to clean them out in case it's a bot. And then they admitted that it's about people who they think have problematic posts on QAnon or something like that. So once again, Twitter is the ultimate arbiter. I think it's well beyond any of that, though. Forget all that, because that's small ball. I think Trump's ban from Twitter is outrageous. I think it's absurd. He's the president of the United States. And yes, he is sometimes incendiary. But the two tweets that got him booted off of Twitter ultimately were him saying, my supporters will not be treated unfairly. And secondly, I will not be at the inauguration on January 20th. After everything that's been said and done, those are the two, right? Meanwhile, the Ayatollah Khamenei is on there calling for jihad against Israel and for people to join the Palestinians in the fight. That's fine. That doesn't even get a Twitter warning, Eric. Not even a warning. Not even this is disputed, right? And Trump is banned forever. But forget Trump, okay? Because Trump, like it or not, is moving out of the Oval Office. And it's about the rest of the right now and the crackdown on them. The total deplatforming of Parler is a serious thing. Maybe you've never heard of Parler if you're watching the show. Maybe you have. But it's turned into a right-wing Twitter. It was meant to just be a place that really embraced free speech and didn't crack down on everybody's little word. Now it's turned into more right-leaning because that kind of a forum is attractive to Republicans. Not only did they take it off of the apps on your smartphone, on Google phones, on Apple phones, they have removed the entire ability for it to exist by Amazon removing its server capacity. Parler's been killed. It has been assassinated by left-wing big tech executives. And why? Because they said there was incendiary talk prior to the Capitol Hill riot. Let's talk about what was on Facebook. Let's talk about what was on Twitter. The stuff on Facebook, according to Glenn Greenwald, who was on my podcast this morning, and he's been studying it, is far worse and far more widespread than anything we saw on Parler. So why isn't Facebook having its server capacity, which is also provided in part by Amazon, pulled? I'll give you one word: ideology. And people know it. Yeah. And unless people stand up to these big tech bullies, it's going to keep happening over and over and over, just as we've seen over the past weeks and months, them cracking down on individuals to date.
I think that's a really, really important point. I am a pro-free market person. I believe companies like Twitter and Facebook should be able to put who they want on when they want. However, when they go ahead and administer bias the way they do and administer at the basis of ideology, at the altar of ideology, they've changed from a free market business into some sort of publishing company. They've decided to publish certain things and not publish other things, which is fine also. But if they're going to go ahead and do that, then Megyn, and Trump has been really out front on this. For some reason, it's just not gaining the steam it probably should. The Section 230, where it says that social media companies can do what they want. However, if they go ahead and do that and become publishers, where ideology plays a role in what they publish and what doesn't, then they need to be held accountable the way other publishing companies, the way media companies are held accountable. Right now, they hide behind that 230 rule where they can say, we didn't say it. We had nothing to do with it. Someone else said it. But if they're allowing someone to say that incendiary comments and then polling others for those similar comments or even less comments, they've become a media publishing company. Do you disagree or agree with that?
I will tell you this. I think it's bigger than 230. I think we should forget 230. This is not about 230 anymore. This is about big tech acting as an arm of government. They're big enough, powerful enough, and monopolistic enough that they should be treated as an arm of government. There is case law, a lot of it, to support doing that. And what that would mean is that unlike most private industry, they would be subjected to the First Amendment, which governs governmental behavior, government crackdowns on free speech, not that of private industry. They've crossed over. And so what needs to happen now is we need to acknowledge that. Somebody needs to sue them. Parler, I think, which filed an antitrust case against, which I don't see as very strong, should amend its complaint to add this argument, get them declared an arm of the federal government for all intents and purposes, and then they're going to have to be subjected to the requirement that one may not discriminate when it comes to viewpoint. Right. Viewpoint discrimination and cracking down on free speech is not okay from the feds, and it's not okay from big tech.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Always great talking to Megyn. Again, the Megyn Kelly Show on podcasts across wherever you go. The hottest new podcast around. You got to listen to it. It is absolutely stunning, awesome to listen to. Megyn, always good to have you on as well. Thank you.
See you, Eric. See you soon.
Let's go now to White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro. Peter, can you just weigh in on something that's been that a lot of people are very, very interested? You know, you're there. Trump, Pence, meetings. What's the relationship like now?
Well, that's between those two gentlemen. I can tell you that there was disappointment with what happened on January 6th. I think there was a clear belief that the vice president had the authority to basically take that 10 days that had been requested to look at what are undeniably election irregularities. So we know that happened. We know they've talked, but whatever's going on is between them. I'm not getting in the middle of it.
Gotcha. Mick Mulvaney, I believe at one point he was chief of staff for a very short period of time. Took a little shot at you on one of the weekend shows, Fox News Sunday. Take a listen.
He used to love vigorous debate from all sides of a particular issue. I don't know if he still has that in the White House. I don't know if he's surrounded himself with people like Rudy Giuliani and Peter Navarro that simply tell him what he wants to hear and reaffirm exactly what they think he wants them to say. That's a very dangerous position for any president to be in.
So what about that, Peter? Does he, did he? I mean, listen, everyone surrounds themselves with people who are like-minded as them, but is there pushback to the president? Were you able to push back at things that maybe you didn't agree with him necessarily?
Look, I think one of the problems that we had in the White House is that there were people inside like Mick Mulvaney who were not on board with the Trump agenda. The Trump agenda is one in which we have fair trade, we have secure borders, and we put an end to endless wars. And that wasn't people like Mulvaney, it wasn't people like John Kelly. And I think the situation that we've had more recently is more consistent with the White House that is pushing on forward with the Trump agenda. So let Mick take his shots. It's okay with me.
And I will remind folks, Mulvaney was no friend of Trump prior to Trump appointing him as chief of staff. That was a bit of a head scratcher. Sir, I want to move on a little bit, Peter. You've been front and center with China. For a lot of us out here who deal with the business community, I'm concerned about U.S.-China trade imbalances, China's kind of stranglehold over us on how we deal with trade. We have a trade imbalance that China dictates. They also hold a lot of our debt. What will a Biden administration look like with respect to China?
Eric, I'm very concerned about the next 6 months. I think this is going to be one of the most difficult times in the U.S.-China relationship. Communist China, President Xi Jinping has already talked about throwing shots across America's bow. What they're trying to do is celebrate dictatorship over democracy, point to the circus on Capitol Hill as saying that democracy is failing, that their model's better handling whatever it is, including the pandemic. And Eric, as this pandemic, which they foisted upon us, has been going on, they crushed democracy in Hong Kong. They invaded India. They're going wild in the South China Sea. They've threatened Biden now on the Taiwan issue. They are feeling, as they say, their oats. And I think they're going to push this next administration very hard. And my concern is looking at the people who are part of that. It's basically Biden 3, right? It's the third term of Barack Obama, essentially. And those people were not up to the job in the first two to standing up to China. So I'm very concerned about blue-collar America. They are the ones most at risk from China. I'm very concerned about this country in terms of cyber attacks, intellectual property theft, the things I call the 7 deadly sins, which communist China keeps doing to us. So this is going to be a tough time for us.
Peter, I have one more question. Now, about a minute. So there's a transition. There should be a transition going. Have you met with the incoming Biden administration for trade, and specifically China? And what are you telling them? And what do you have confidence in them if you are?
I haven't been asked to do that. It's not clear to me what lines of communication are open. I will always be willing to talk to anybody in that administration to reflect on my experiences over the last 4 years and what my thoughts might be. We are a country. We will be unified in the sense of a mission to protect our economy and protect this country. But I'm under no illusions that we are unified as a country now politically. We are a 50-50 country split right in half over significant differences of opinion as to how both domestic and foreign policy should go. And this is going to be a tough time for America.
Right. Very, very disturbing, Peter. I do some work with the ONDCP, the drug policy of the United States. There's already been a discussion with the incoming Biden administration, so there is a transition going on there. Very, very disturbing. Headline from this interview right here breaks some news that the Biden administration has not reached out to Peter Navarro regarding trade and specifically with China. That is of concern. Peter, thank you for your time, Peter Navarro.
You take care, sir. Bye-bye.
Congressman Ralph Norman was inside the Capitol as the rioters broke in. Congressman, we are glad you and your colleagues were not hurt, and we thank you for being here. The House is expected to impeach President Trump for a second time, accusing him of inciting an insurrection last week, a move you don't support. Why do you not support that?
Well, it's ludicrous. I mean, what they're doing is something that just shouldn't happen on these floors. I mean, get this, impeachment is very serious. It's not just a run-of-the-mill thing that's passed on this floor every day. You go through committees, you have debate, you allow witnesses on both sides. None of that has taken place. We've got 7 days before a new president is being sworn in. This has no chance of going before the Senate. And it's just a hatred of this president, and it shouldn't happen. They're the ones dividing the country. And where had they spelled out the language that was used by the president that shows incitement? They don't have it. This is just a political ploy that they're using. And at this time, when our police officers need rest, to call us back to Washington, D.C., when the officers need to be with their families, they lost 2 officers, one by suicide and one by injury. And it's just wrong, and they can do what they do. Nancy Pelosi has the gavel, but I'm not supporting it, and I hope, I think the majority of my colleagues will not support it, who are Republicans.
Well, Congressman, there was a group that stood up and said we don't support the seating of Joe Biden as the next president. And then there's a lot of pushback. A lot of businesses were saying we're not going to donate. There's some concern about reelection. Do you have any concerns about either reelection or getting donations from corporate America because of your pushback on that seating of Biden?
I joined the group because I thought the Constitution was violated. Article 2, Section 1, any change in the electoral process has to go through the state legislature. The Democrats have done it since for the last 20 years against every Republican president. Mm-hmm. For those companies who say they're going to ban us from giving donations, I don't want their money. Keep their money. It's a cowardly way for them to act to do this. Donald Trump, you may not have liked his personality, but he was the most pro-life, pro-Israel, pro-business, that we've had. And but no, I'm as far as I can defend my actions. Now, not everyone will agree with me, but for the companies to follow the woke culture, I don't want their money.
All right. And final question, we're seeing some sort of tamping down on free speech. And a lot on the left will say, well, that's not fair. You can't really say that. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, everyone pulling Donald Trump's feeds. It feels like a communist country to me. It really does. I think everyone should have the right to say what they want as much as you may not agree with what they're saying. Your final thoughts?
It doesn't just feel like it is. This is what the socialists do. This is what the communists do. Yet, you look at the rhetoric that's been out there for the last 4 years against this president. Look at what other politicians have said. Get in the face of politicians, run them out of restaurants. You got movie stars saying they blow the White House up. Why weren't they? Their Facebook and and social media taken down. No, it's a double standard in this country. The 75 million are not going away. And it's sad, but it's a time that, the conservatives have got to band together. And we're not a socialist country, and nor should we ever be.
All right, Congressman, we're going to really appreciate your time, and I know you're busy. There's a lot going on in the Hill. There's an impeachment vote. There's potential. I guess Mike Pence has said that he will not participate in an amendment, 25th Amendment to remove the president. A lot going on. Thank you again for your time, Congressman.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Straight ahead, the leader of CHOP in Seattle, Raz Simone, joins me. His take on the Capitol Hill attacks and moving forward next.
America's news. New and now. From across the nation, I'm Jan Jeffcoat, introducing the National Desk News. It's live, it's immediate, it's impactful, investigative news.
They were counting on no one finding out what they were doing.
I'm Kel Thompson. Breaking news coverage across our striking and unique cities. Small towns.
Seeing it floating on top of the water like that, I mean, that's just such a cool feeling.
Wide open plains.
If we don't think about our rural communities, they will be gone.
Our mountains and coasts.
We're having to go to a foreign country to get insulin.
Based in Washington, D.C., the National Desk provides America's news weekday mornings. Nearly 4,000 National Desk journalists covering America.
Live across America with breaking news at the Live Desk.
The wind is going faster than we are.
The National Desk team provides balance.
There's no question whatsoever. You're more susceptible to this damage from the COVID-19.
A balance of local, regional, national, and international news.
Wake up to America's News Now each weekday from the National Desk.
The National Desk brings the American story home to you.
Raz Simone is a musician, but became recognized as a leader of the Capitol Hill Organized Protest, or CHOP, last year in Seattle. Raz, thanks for being here. Do us a favor. What was going through your mind as you watched what was happening at the U.S. Capitol last week?
I mean, to be honest, I was kind of just smiling and paying attention, and I was waiting to see what people's response was going to be. Because I thought it was very ironic, and I was waiting to see if people were going to call these people warlords, if people were going to look at them with that same light, because I had done a lot less, but people were making me into this big monster, for having a gun and just standing my ground. And then you have these people that were breaking into the Capitol building and putting their feet up on the desk and pushing people around in there, and those are nothing of what I would have been doing at all. So I was waiting to see what would be America's response after America had hated me so much for having a gun out and trying to stand my ground and being respectful. I was wondering what it was going to look like on the other end, and if people were going to be judged with the same weight that I received. So I was just kind of just watching, and that was about that. Yeah, I don't agree with what they were doing necessarily, but it was, it was just interesting. And then also it was one of those things where I was like, now you get to kind of see and feel how we feel, where you got different people that are very, very extreme this way or very, very extreme that way. And you can't just act like everyone, in that category is how you feel. People were looking at it like anything that the left does must have to do with me. Like I'm not even a part of that, or anything that this does, has to do with that. So, just just kind of seeing that and being able to, you know, just look back and watch and see, okay, what's going to happen now? How are people going to take this? You know, but that's about
so aside from the people who are watching and judging, Raz, did you have any sort of, I don't know, sympathetic reaction to the people who are actually doing what they were doing, rioting on the Capitol steps, into the Capitol?
Again, the people that were rioting into the Capitol were the people that were calling me a monster and a terrorist just for using my Second Amendment right. And so I always thought that was interesting, because I thought, wouldn't we be on the same side if we both believe in our rights in that way? I haven't done anything crazy, disrespectful, not doing anything violent. So I didn't, you know, there's not much sympathy to have at that point. It was just like, I hope that you gain some understanding and you can put yourself into my shoes, you know, and I hope that you guys can figure out a better way of going about this, because this isn't getting the result that I think that you guys want. That's kind of how I got
about a minute or so, Raz, only. Can you just we need to get back together, and the country needs to reunite. Do you have any recommendations, any advice for the country to get to reunite, to show some unity?
I think people need to leave the extremes. You know, I'm tired of the super far extremes. You know, the extreme right, the extreme left. No one's listening to each other. What do you expect that you're going to get at that point? You know, we need to leave the extreme left Nazis and extreme right Nazis. It's not gonna work in that way. Need to be able to put each other's, you know, we need to put ourselves into each other's shoes to be able to get anything going and listen, or we're just going to be in this back and forth. And I mean, yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I feel like people want that. They want that back and forth. They want that issue, you know. And so you got to wake up and stop just listening to that same program, using the same buzzwords. You know, people need to get out of their vacuums. I feel like you've got a vacuum on this side and a vacuum on that side. When you only have a friend group that believes exactly how you believe over here, or a friend group that believes exactly how you believe over here, you're never going to grow, and you're just going to keep on boiling on that hate that you have, and listening to that same programming, and then nothing's going to get achieved except for destruction. Pretty much, that's how I feel.
You know, that is some really good advice, Raz. I hope people are listening. I hope people understand. I hope the media is listening. You know, my industry is probably at fault for a lot of what the divisiveness that's going on in the country. The further left and the further right you push, the more audience you seem to get. And the reality is, we all need to find that middle ground, eliminate the extreme left and the extreme right on both sides, and kind of find some unity down the middle. I would agree with that. Raz, always good to bring you on, and we'll have you again on soon. And let's hope some of your advice for unity is heard by America. Raz Simone, everyone. Ahead on America This Week, our panel discusses the path ahead as the nation still comes to terms with last week's attack on the Capitol. Now, hundreds of you called in after the attack to let me know what you thought about it. Keep calling toll-free, 888-601-0032. Many of you were disappointed and saddened to see what happened, and others rallied behind the Democrats.
I'm sick of Donald Trump, who is Putin's puppet, tearing this country apart. We have a great country, and we are going to move forward with Biden and Harris to build back America better.
Biden won fair and square. It don't hurt to lose an election. When Hillary lost, nobody else went up to the Capitol and did like that.
People say we should respect the Capitol building. No, we should respect the people in the building who are sent there to represent us all. So when they go off on their personal agenda and act like many gods, this is what happens.
The emperor has no clothes.
You know, just saw the special report, you know, the president's statement. You know, I think it's a good thing that he called for no violence, although I have questions whether he's doing that sincerely or just covering his butt.
I want to thank you, Eric, for speaking the truth on your station, and I'll only listen to the station, well, the programs that speaks the truth. I do not watch the other news no more.
Well, that's what I try to do each week and every week, and I call out the BS on both sides when I hear it. Here's that number again, 601-0032, toll free, or follow me on Twitter at Eric Bolling, and we'll make sure they hear you too. With riots and impeachments dominating the news cycle these days, these are certainly crazy times, folks. So this next bit of news may actually be some good timing. I'm launching a cool new podcast with my friend, Hall of Fame quarterback Brett Favre. We talk about everything from football to politics to business to culture. Who's the best quarterback in the playoffs? Is it Brady, Breeze, Mahomes, Rodgers? To how a post-Trump America is going to look. Or what's up with Armie Hammer? We'll talk it all out. It's going to be uncensored and off the hook, I guarantee that. Bowling with Favre launches at the end of the month on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand.
Okay, let's hear from both sides of the aisle now. Going head-to-head, Sinclair political commentator Amisha Cross and former governor of Maryland, Bob Ehrlich. Let's start with this one, you guys. Impeachment, why now? Again, this is being taped prior to the actual impeachment vote. So let me start with you, Amisha. Make your case for impeachment, please.
We've seen this president. We know his rhetoric. His rhetoric has led to mob violence this time. This is the last straw. This is a president whose tweets. This is a president whose speeches. This is a president whose stump in various states has led individuals to want to pursue this type of violence. He named the place. He named the date, the time. He created an environment for this insurrection to take place, and he encouraged his MAGA supporters to do it. At this point, we have to prove that President Trump is not above the law, that this is a president who has reached the wit's end of our Constitution. This is a president who needs to be held accountable. This is a president who cannot go about inciting violence and creating these types of actions when they destroy the fabric of America and our democracy, putting lives at risk. This president has gone too far. And impeachment, this is our last lever to pull.
Bob, you know, there are those on the left who are, and even in Congress, who are pointing to the line where President Trump said you have to fight for what's yours. I think there are millions of cases where that line has been used in American politics on the streets in protests and movements. Yet, for some reason, the president, do you think the president is being held to a different standard than the rest of American and the Constitution's meaning?
Well, the president's been held to, I don't know if there's a standard you could cite, because this is simply the latest chapter in the long-running saga that began even prior to his swearing in, when certain folks out there, certain members, were talking about impeachment. The impeachment dialogue continued through years 1, 2, 3, and 4. You saw the Russia hoax, you saw the Ukraine hoax, and this is simply the latest chapter of it. I would also say that, by the way, there's constitutional scholars who have opined, but what's interesting here is besides this long-running history besides the fact that these constitutional scholars say no, this is the party that we keep hearing wants to heal. This is the president we keep hearing wants to bring us all together. This polarized country, this great divide, and I couldn't think of a worse way to achieve that aim. I would also point out, by the way, that Senator Manchin in West Virginia had an interesting quote. I thought a pretty good quote, very good quote the other day. And I'm just going to quote him. Be so ill-advised for Joe Biden, this is the context of impeachment here, trying to heal the country, trying to be the president of all the people when we're going to be so divided and fighting again. It appears that some folks on the left just always are going to fight the president, including, by the way, when he's out of office, because that's really my last point. With regard to process, if you pass impeachment today or tomorrow, it goes to the Senate for the trial, and there's no time for a trial. So we all know.
Bob, just a lot. I don't mean to be rude. I don't mean to cut you off, but let's stay on that topic for a second. And Misha, if you want to hold President Trump accountable for what some of his supporters did, I get it. I understand that. But for Joe Biden to say I'm not involved in the impeachment, is he not? Is he not condoning impeachment? If he really wanted to make this stop, he could step and say, enough, guys, I'm trying to unite the country. He can't play the uniter, the great uniter, while his party is trying to impeach and disenfranchise half the country, 74 million voters. Can he?
You know what I find extremely interesting here, Eric, is that Republicans are now talking about unity. Where has the unity been when Donald Trump was absolutely fine pushing down the throats of Americans policies that only created further divisions? Where was the unity when President Trump and his MAGA supporters were out here trying to throw out the millions of votes of African Americans across this country and challenging them in states where the African American vote pulled it over the edge for Joe Biden? Where was the unity when he said when the looting starts, the shooting starts, when he was out here supporting supporting police officers in terms of police brutality against African Americans in this country? Where was the unity then? Right now, we're talking about accountability.
Okay, I agree, Misha. I agree with you. I don't think Donald Trump was a uniter. He was polarizing. There's no question in my mind. My question to you was, Joe Biden says, well, let's bring back unity. Let's heal the country. Let's bring back the unity, to unify the country. Yet his party is dividing the country as we speak on the House floor.
Democrats are doing their constitutional duty. They're holding a president accountable for acts of insurrection. They're holding a president accountable for what he has done to foster this group of individuals who attacked our Capitol last week. They are doing what is necessary to ensure that our country gets back on track, because you cannot let a president, and mind you, this isn't President Trump's only time of inciting violence. He literally did it just a few months ago with his rhetoric online and his rhetoric on stump speeches when we saw the attacks that were foiled, the plots against the governor of Michigan. This is something that should have been stopped a long time ago. If you don't hold the president accountable, he will continue to incite this mob type of action. He will continue to radicalize his base. And this is high time that this president is held accountable for his actions, because they literally can take people's lives.
Well, what about that, Bob? Should the president be held accountable for the actions of the people who follow him so vehemently, so aggressively?
Listen, if you're going to adopt that standard, that's going to be very difficult for any political leader to say anything at any time. What you just heard, though, was this familiar indictment that we've heard for the last 4 years. A lot of Democrats never go over the fact that he won. A lot of Democrats, in fact, continue to challenge the fact that he won. We've heard that. We've seen that in members of Congress. They clearly, candidate Trump had a very clear agenda, a very different agenda from President Obama. Hillary was supposed to be Obama 3. It didn't happen. There was great disappointment. There was resentment, and it certainly turned into hatred. And all you saw for the last 4 years, including, by the way, through the last impeachment and through the Russia hoax and every other hoax that we've seen, is this very serious sense of this guy's an illegitimate president. And obviously now you see it at the end. So it just doesn't. It's a continuation, in my view, of the vitriol that we've seen from the left. He's leaving in a week. Again, your point is very well taken. If President-elect Biden really is serious about bringing the country together and stopping the polarization in some sense, he'll step forward.
Yeah, we need to do that if we're going to unite the country. Anyway, Amisha Cross, thank you very much. Bob Ehrlich, appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Every week, we honor first responders who died in the line of duty protecting our country. This week, our nation mourns Officer Brian Sicknick with the U.S. Capitol Police in Washington, D.C. He was protecting our lawmakers and our democracy during last week's attack on the Capitol. Officer Sicknick was a 42-year-old military veteran and also served with the Capitol Police for 12 years. Clearly loved and respected by his brothers and sisters in blue. He leaves behind his parents, 2 brothers, and a longtime girlfriend. From all of us at America This Week, we are so sorry for your loss and incredibly grateful for your service. Rest in peace, Officer Sicknick.
America's News. New and now. From across the nation, I'm Jan Jeffcoat, introducing the National Desk News. It's live, it's immediate, it's impactful, investigative news.
They were counting on no one finding out what they were doing.
I'm Kel Thompson. Breaking news coverage across our striking and unique cities. Small towns.
Seeing it floating on top of the water like that, I mean, that's just such a cool feeling.
Wide open plains.
If we don't think about our rural communities, they will be gone.
Our mountains and coasts.
We're having to go to a foreign country to get insulin.
Based in Washington, D.C., the National Desk provides America's news weekday mornings. Nearly 4,000 National Desk journalists covering America.
Live across America with breaking news at the live desk.
The wind is going faster than we are.
Impactful.
Workers are not expendable.
The National Desk team provides balance.
There's no question whatsoever. You're more susceptible to this damage from the COVID-19.
A balance of local, regional, national, and international news.
Wake up to America's News Now, each weekday from the National Desk.
The National Desk brings the American story home to you.
Let's talk balls and strikes. Joining me now is Politico's White House reporter, Dan Lippman, also a good friend of mine. Dan, a lot to talk about, a lot going on. Can we start with the media, social media, and the bias towards conservatives? I think there's a massive bifurcation in the country right now. The right blaming social media for censorship, the left saying it's about time.
Yeah, I think both sides are kind of have points that are on their side. It's a shame that all these people are getting kicked off social media. If you're for freedom of speech, because you don't want to leave people on these fringe websites and apps where people are kind of get more extreme, but you also want to hold people accountable. Where if you're going to spread constant lies and falsehoods about how the election was stolen or that there was massive voter fraud, these are private companies. And so they're not obligated like a public square to have your protest sign right there and have it go viral, because false information, they've done studies, goes more viral than actual news, which is sometimes less, more boring and more straightforward and less sensational and conspiratorial.
And you've done this prior to your White House coverage. You've done this. You talked about the social media. You've been involved in this. So I know you're a smart guy in this aspect. So I'm trying to figure this out. I had 1.2 million Twitter followers 10 days ago. Now I have 1.1. I've lost 100,000 followers. Okay, I get it. You want to pull people off that maybe are seen as radical. For me, maybe they're following me. But are we going to assume that they only follow conservatives? Like the left doesn't seem to be complaining about losing anyone. Like, I, for one, follow people on both sides of the aisle because I want to know. I'm guessing these people who are getting pulled followed Pelosi and AOC and Biden as well, but no one on the left seems to be complaining about losing Twitter followers.
Yeah, I think, I should have checked my Twitter followers to see if I lost any in the last week. I have been kind of busy with my job and covering the news to keep track of that. But there is a concern that, you're going to make these people lose faith in democracy and that they are going to get ginned up more by being in their cocoons and going on the dark web and becoming even more radicalized. You don't want to have a low-grade civil war in the next few years in this country where you have people who are extremists kind of acting like the weathermen and setting off pipe bombs here and there because they feel censored by big tech, which is a crazy thing to even think about. But we are talking about, there was an attempted violent insurrection in the Capitol last week, spurred on by the president, who kind of put fuel on the fire and didn't realize that the Capitol would be breached or that Capitol Police would be so bad at their jobs in terms of keeping protesters where they were supposed to be, which is on the National Mall.
Dan, again, this is balls and strikes. We're just talking straight up, and I want to inject my opinion into this. Let's turn a little bit. Your beat is the White House. What is your reporting? What are your sources telling you? What is the mentality, the mood of Donald Trump behind closed doors? Because frankly, a lot of us don't know what's going on back there.
Well, he issued a statement this afternoon where he calls for no violence and calls for a peaceful transition. That's taken a couple months over. He did one last week as well, but it's been a while in the making that he's had to do this, and so this is something that you have a situation where he is cocooned. He doesn't have many close advisors anymore. It's down to the originals, plus Mark Meadows, who was an ally in some ways on the campaign. So we're down to John McEntee, Dan Scavino, Kayleigh McEnany. And so it feels like it's a bunker mentality. He went to Texas yesterday, but he is just counting down the days. I'm sure Melania wants to get out of there as well. He's not really mounting a serious effort to go against the impeachment just yet. Maybe they'll do that in the Senate. But I think he sees the writing on the wall that he's going to lose, and McConnell is not going to back him up this time.
So Trump has said that there will be a peaceful transfer of power. We had Peter Navarro on earlier, who is a White House trade advisor, specifically interested in China, who said that the Biden camp hasn't reached out to him for any sort of transition of power, of information. We want that. Is your reporting that there is some sort of handshake between the outgoing Trump administration and the incoming Biden administration? Or are these two factions just so divided that they can't even get it together for the good of the country?
I think the transition has been going relatively well across departments. There's been hundreds, maybe even 1,000 meetings between the transition folks and people in the government currently. And so Navarro, I don't think the Biden team is that interested in meeting with him, but they have been meeting with the Trade Representative's Office and Commerce Department and Treasury and all of the agencies. They have, since the GSA said we're going to have a new president, the transition has proceeded apace. And so I think the American people can feel confident that once on day one of the Biden administration, that there will be people who know what's going on in government, and that the military and the national security space apparatus are not going to miss a beat.
Very quickly, Dan, about 20 seconds or so, what do you think the relationship with the Biden administration, the briefing room, and the media will look like?
I think it'll be much better than it was in the Trump White House, but I think it will, I'm sure, have some adversarial moments where the media wants more information and they don't feel like the Biden team is giving up enough.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Dan Lippman, always great to have you on again. Politico, boy, all eyes on the political newsletters and what comes into your inbox in the morning. Again, Dan Lippman, everyone, Politico. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Eric.
Remember to set your DVR so you never miss an episode of America This Week. We have a complete list of times and cities on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/America Bowling. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to find our shows and key interviews.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand.
You can watch America This Week wherever you are and wherever you go. Just download the Stir app to your smartphone, Roku, Apple TV, and other devices, and start getting 100% free TV. America This Week airs every Sunday at 9 a.m. and again at midnight on your local Stir City channel. That's Channel 1. That puts every show at your fingertips. Again, 100% free. This has been a week to process, to grieve, and to reassess ourselves. I've been confused lately by the hostility of friends and family. People I've known my whole life, good people, now filled with anger and animosity towards each other, all because they've picked a side and somehow now feel they must defend that side to the end. As we all look back on the images of January 6th attack on the Capitol, and I said this last week, this isn't who we are as a nation. We are better than this. We have to find some common ground. Now, this won't happen overnight, and impeachment and a new president won't change the divides nor ease the pent-up tensions, but I have to hope that we will get there. Somehow we have to find our way back to a sense of normalcy. Have a great night, everybody.